brand is your consistency of what your behavior has been in all roles that you've played. The problem with people is they really change faces depending on the roles they play.
Hello, Shanta. Welcome to our program Flex Executive Code. It's wonderful to have you here.
Same here, Karunesh.
For my viewers, those who are listening, Shanta has been an old friend. I know that before that she spent a lot of time working on the business side. She did multiple different roles with three big brands in the banking world. What she has been doing now is even more interesting. And today, Shanta is here to talk to us about her career, how she has moved into a new chapter of her life. So, Shanta, welcome again.
Ha. So, Karunesh, thank you for having me. And it's such a lovely opportunity. And I couldn't have found a better platform than this to share what I'm doing right now. So, Karunesh, I don't think sometimes everything happens through design. Sometimes things happen because you really start searching for your purpose. And when I say purpose, I want to do something which will create an impact. It doesn't matter where and how, but it should create an impact. Lot more lasting than just a casual meeting or a casual transition of a job. And I think for me, when I actually turned 55, I decided to step out of full time career. And this was not by chance, it was by choice. I mean, it was something that I was trying to figure out to say retirement. This word scares me. And this word that, I would retire at 58 or 60 is scary because I was almost thinking like I'm reliving my life. I'm getting younger. I'm aging like wine. Why the hell should I call myself a retired resource? I really wanted to be a resource that resigned. And that's exactly what I did with my last banking job, which I'm very thankful to. I did about 12 years with them. I was part of the core team that set up that bank. And, it was a very emotional, impactful, purposeful, and very satisfying journey because that's the bank where I moved from business and numbers quarter on quarter to actually doing the softer part of being a banker. So I took over CSR, I took over internal branding, I also did HR. And I think these were all new areas for me, but this was my most exciting part of that journey and also very fulfilling, but also opened a new chapter in my life because I got exposed to things which were beyond kayamat se kayamat tak, like we say in Hindi, quarter se quarter tak. I think I had moved, psychologically and physically. And that's the opportunity that made me step out of full time work when I turned 55. That's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, you come out of, you're like a newborn child. You are like ignorance is bliss. You're evaluating, and suddenly you feel wanted. Yeah. Nish? It's a lovely feeling to be wanted. Wanted by whom? Wanted by everybody who thinks you're still young to leave the full time work, which probably in the other organization they thought I was 3 years or 5 years away from retirement. Suddenly there were a bunch of people who approached you saying, "Hey, you're still young. Why don't you take on this? You've still got a career ahead of you." And so you feel young again. And I think feeling young at 55 without a chartered plan is what my life has been. So the first 6 months was I really didn't know what I'm going to do. And when I say I really didn't know what I'm going to do, I think it would be a little bit of a lie as well. I knew for a fact that I would be in the social sector. So that's the most important part of where I stepped out and wanted to reevaluate myself. So it began all over there. Yes, I sit on multiple boards. God's been very kind. I also have set up a trans cafe where I'm uplifting trans people from sex work. I also place trans people in organizations, truly believing in diversity, equity, inclusion beyond just women and gender, which is restricted to women. I also am part of a special school where disabled kids we support. So, broadly, this is what I do in addition to some professional assignments. Interesting stuff.
Amazing, amazing. Somehow I didn't know about the cafe thing, which is so nice to hear.
Thank you.
I know that you are the one who would normally take up these kind of bold steps, but so good to hear that you're doing this.
Thank you.
Shanta, I've been very curious to hear about specifically the time that you spent in between. So you said that first 6 months I didn't know what I was going to do, but you still had some idea. You still knew broadly.
Yeah.
Emotionally, for some people, it can be very challenging phase. And I remember you meeting you at that time. You were as high on your spirits at that time that you are right now. But of course, content changes. I've seen your positivity also playing a very big role in the way you do things, the way you come across, and the way you attract that energy also. But I would love to hear about your phase when you had decided to move on. You moved on. You had not picked up anything, and people will find that silence very deafening in a way. So I want to hear your views of how did you feel and how was that moment.
Karunesh, I'm glad you're asking me 3 years hence. Probably at that point of time, it would have been a very emotional question for me. Yeah, because I have never taken a sabbatical. I have never taken a break in my career, even just like that. Just to evaluate some other option or whatever. All my life, since I mean for 35 years, I was pursuing something called a title, something called a recognition at work. There was constantly, and I was getting it all also. It's not like, I was sidelined or I got a pink slip or anything. God's been very kind to me. So I think, and I always had good bosses, very, very good bosses. And all of that, helped me to build a career where I probably started as a telemarketing executive. I also sold microwave ovens door to door in the early part of my career, and then upgraded my education just because I wanted to get into what we like to call the white collar jobs. And so the journey was has been very fruitful, but the titles start defining you. You are known as the head of HR, CSR, branding, head of retail. I've always had some title, and that title probably was my recognition. One fine morning, there is no recognition. There is nobody asking you other than those who say, "Oh, we miss you." For about a week, 10 days, 1 month, everybody tells you how much they miss you at work, right? They call you for coffee, teas, the pending farewells, and all of that. And probably that keeps you busy in the first 15, 20 days of your
Mm,
life.
mm,
But I think one of the things that I did, and I'm very glad I did, was I met some very senior people during that month. And when I say senior, someone who I probably were role models. Some people were in their 70s, some were in their early 60s, all older than me, and probably better placed than me by the time they stepped out. And I thought, let me go meet them because they're losing their title as well. How am I different? So when I met them and got their perspectives, I think it helped me a lot. So in the first 2 months, I think spending time getting to know what others are doing played a very important role. The second piece that helped me a lot was there were a lot of people who probably in their late 40s, early 50s had got their pink slips, or in a structuring or a restructuring or political toxicity, had actually lost their title, and many of them had already stepped out and had figured out what they're going to do. One of the biggest things that I learned from some of them was the way they planned their financial makeup. That was an important task maybe for some of them. Luckily for me, I was pretty well planned. I mean, I won't say that was a deterring factor, but it's good to see how well prepared people are, when they're stepping out of anything full time. So all of this did help me. The third thing was, just being very strong to say, I don't want to go full time. I think my positivity worked for me in that direction. And channelizing my energy to doing something more impactful and purposeful was exciting. And I think what keeps you going is, if you're financially secure, is new learnings. And so that worked for me. The next thing that worked for me was, upgradation in learning. There are some things you don't do. You
mm,
just assume you're learning on the job, but just giving a certificate course and scoring a high mark is a thrill which I can't even explain. On Saturdays, this Saturday that went by, I was actually in a workshop. It was the last day of Ganpati. I took the local train, Karunesh, because you can't take your car, just to go and attend a workshop which was from 9:30 to 5:30 on a day when under normal course I would have been, so jittery on my chair at a
yeah.
job to say, oh, it's going to get terrible. The roads are going to get bad. I have to leave at 4. I have to leave at 4, or I have to leave at 3. And I was here sitting till 5:30, then hobnobbing with a bunch of young kids till about 6:30 and never feeling the pain, saying, oh, it's okay, I will take the train back home. Worse off, I'll walk through.
So
And
nice.
I think that's the pleasure of being positive about every situation. And therefore, I liked that line of yours that maybe the positivity at that phase did help. And the fourth, and not the last, but not the least, actually, it's the last line, but not the least, family and friends. I think
Mm,
it's very important when you're climbing up that staircase of success that you don't forget that there are friends which you need to always keep around you, they do work heavily when you are in these ebbs of be feeling lonely, or you probably are drained of your positivity. So all of that, I think, was for the first 4 months was tough. But later on, there's been no looking back. Yeah, today, if you ask me, I should have done this 10 years earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, lovely. So nice. And thanks for sharing that. And Shanta, again, I've seen you closely, and I think one of the thing that I picked up quite prominent in your style of working, that even when you were in your corporate role, you were always quite externally focused with your CSR work on one
Yes.
side. You are also, as a HR professional, quite well known in your HR community as well as industry communities and associations and so on. I have also seen a lot of other people who might go through a similar phase. And one of the biggest challenge I hear them talking about is, oh, I was always very focused on my work. I never had time to do anything outside. I could not meet people. I could only meet people internally. And we know that large companies are very internally focused. They are not external. Your networking is also internally focused, right? I know also that a lot of people come to you now for coaching and they're asking you for help and they're asking you for guidance. How do you see that part? And now that you're experiencing that and seeing the difference, how do you see that personal branding aspect of this playing a role in your portfolio career?
So Karnish, very good question. I just think, first of all, let me articulate what I think is a personal brand. A personal brand is your consistency of what your behavior has been in all roles that you've played. The problem with people is they really change faces depending on the roles they play. So if I started off as a manager leading, say, three people as a
Mm.
team, and that became 15,000 people, as a manager, there were certain traits that I possessed. And I continued to possess those traits even when I became very, very senior at a CXO level. And one of them was authenticity and sheer honesty. I think when you're building your personal brand, people, what you built over 30 years, suddenly one fine day when you don't have your chair, you come out and you become another brand, it's not going to work for you. Your reputation is going to speak for you. So one is when you're building your personal brand, let people know who you are when you have the chair, not when you're out of the chair. To say, I did not play this, I was a very silent worker, work was worship for me, all of that. I mean, it's great stories, but they're not real. They're not real because somebody listening to that story will say, come on, yeah, you played toxicity, you played politics, you did all of that when you were at work. Now don't give us this jargon when
Yeah.
you're out of it, right? So I think one of it is consistency. How do I keep myself similar in all situations so that people see me as that one face in all situations? The second is, Karunesh, for me, I moved from business to HR.
Mm.
And, one of the challenges that I did face when I came to HR was that there were a lot of professionals in my team who were HR professionals. Either most of them were qualified in that space and also had done that as a career choice.
Mhm.
This wasn't a career choice, right? I came in there and I realized that if I took inputs from my team members alone, I'm going to create an organization which they think is it deems fit, not the kind of organization probably I dream of being a part of, because I'm an employee too. And I think that's one of the reasons why I actually stepped out to learn more from the other partners and players from a networking perspective. A lot of contributions from other better bankers and better professionals, long term serving senior level HR professionals. I think they were very helpful in carving and networking what I really want to do. So that was the second big thing. And that I think we learn from the business roles that we play. That you need to, and if HR starts looking at business as truly strategic partners and operating like strategic HRBPs, the world would be a better place, because there I find it's very internal focused. This is how we do our performance management. This is how we do our talent assessment. This is how we do our learning and OD initiatives. Everything is very internal focused. So one of the things that in very many meetings, I used to have an empty chair and say, this is an employee. Let's not forget, he's an employee. And most importantly, we are also employees. Yeah. Who are we? Why can't we talk our language when we are deciding a policy or a process for somebody? So even if you're internally focused, if you just change your seat to saying, I'm not the HR power center of Comp and Ben, but I'm actually an employee who wants to know how his tax can be saved, that same solution can change.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think, therefore, when you think employee, you are empathetic towards your employee, you are hard when the time comes, you're consistent in your behavior from authenticity, you're building a personal brand.
And
Doesn't matter what you become after this or who you are. I mean, today there are so many professionals who worked with me in my past life who still consult me when they are in trouble. Although it's 3.5 years almost since I left my last employment, but they do reach out to me when they want some guidance, when they are seeking clarity. Why do they reach out to me? And that's a question that keeps coming to me because they know you're authentic.
yeah.
Simple. You're going to tell them the truth. You're not going to play around the bush. I think that for me, I see is lacking in the corporate world, and people put on this facade of being perfect. We can make mistakes. We're human at the end of the day. And when you come out and then you get into this self-aware mode, that I am not the person that I was supposed to be, but I played that role because there was no other situation. I think it's stretching a little too far.
It's so well said, Shanta. And you're absolutely right that this is not something which you do for 3 months and then after that it changes completely. It's a consistency of the person that you are and the brand you build. And one of the mistakes that I must confess, you are absolutely spot on. People come out of the role, suddenly they are all over LinkedIn, all over social media,
Mm,
all over everything. And then again, after 1 year, they vanish because either they found a job or they started to do something else. And that consistency, when it's missing, it really actually impacts it adversely.
yeah.
Yeah. Great. No, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Let me talk about something which is, of course, we are seeing all around us now. So a lot of people are coming out of roles. They are deciding either because of restructuring or because they have done enough. After COVID, we have all seen, and we have seen clearly that people don't want to work necessarily 9 to 5, or I call it 9 to 9.
Correct.
Because that they've done it all. They have, and people are choosing the way they want to live their life, right? And you did exactly that, and a lot of people like who are choosing to do the same thing. Now, the challenge is that the life span is much longer. We are much more healthy. There's nothing called retirement anymore. People move their leaf and then move on to do something different. And we all know that very clearly. It's a very obvious thing. But there's also a very big angle of what will keep them meaningfully engaged. And there's no one size fits all. What is your need may be very different than mine. You may be financially fine and other person may not be. And all those factors play, but that there's a juncture again there where people need to decide that what will be best for them. Okay, we launched our you as you know, we launched our flex executive program exactly to support that. But I still find that people do struggle in that phase, and the personal identity piece, the title and all that, sometime also that starts
Oh.
to play. When people come to you for guidance, how do you kind of advise them? What criteria you lay out for them to think through before they come to a conclusion on what to do and not to do?
So, Karunesh, it's not like one shoe fits all. You have to look at the opposite person and then decide. See, I'm not a certified coach, okay,
Right?
Karunesh? I'm not. But I'm a very strong practitioner,
Hmm.
okay? I've been there, managed big teams, largely men, So I think it's all about, I completely believe that being authentic and being honest and the way you are is what people really start liking you for and start believing in you, rather than that facade of, this is my title, this is what I'm supposed to say. And if you build trust, and trust building happens only through authentic conversations. I mean, I can't play a mistrust game with my kid if I'm not authentic. Yeah,
Right.
forget an external person. My daughter has to trust me for me to actually share what is right for her, wrong for her today, with little or limited knowledge about the work they do.
Hmm.
So I think it just boils down to that.
Yeah, yeah. Very nice and very well articulated. I think that's a very important criteria by itself. I want to talk to you about what you're seeing in terms of the new chapter. A lot of people have this notion that portfolio career, a mix of different things. People get very excited thinking about being on the board of an organization. Okay. You and I know what it means. We also know what it means in terms of accountability, but also in terms of the notion people have about what it can give to them financially? Can that be a career? I want you to kind of paint a picture for people who are thinking of being on the board. And we know that IOD is certifying people. So many people are certified, and they come out and think that, okay, tomorrow morning I should get a call, somebody will appoint me on the board. I want you to share your perspective. I know that you have very good insight and opinion both on this topic. So, for the audience who's looking towards being on the board as part of the portfolio career, two questions therefore. What advice you have in terms of those who want to be on the board, and also what portfolio mix is a good mix to have?
Sure. Thank you for asking this question, Karunesh. In fact, I wrote an article for IOD2 on this. So let me tell you my story so that it helps a little bit, and then we'll build the context around that. So like I said, I was figuring out what am I going to do, what are the opportunities, etc., etc., etc. And there was a consulting assignment. I joined as a consultant on diversity, equity, inclusion because that was my interest area. It also kept me occupied. It was a good space to be. There was somebody who reached out to me and said, we've known you when you were in the bank and we've seen you over these multiple years. What we really like about you is your ability to take conflict and to question the obvious, without being scared of asking a question, which was the obvious. And it'll be great if you can join us on our board. So there was no story about woman. We need a woman director because they already had two women directors on their board. So there was no those prerequisites that
Mhm.
we believe. The second thing is I've never held a board position in my organizations which I worked for. I was a CXO for a long time, but not a board CXO, right? So obviously there was a demand that I should sit for the independent director's job, right? If I wanted an independent director, that was one of our prerequisites. Honestly, this board position came with no ID exam. This happened. I took the first one. Couple of months later, I got another one. And that was completely, a diverse fintech company who asked me to join their board, and I joined their board. Okay, because there I think the need was more women director, and I have worked in digital payments. So there was a qualification that I carried. It was not just about being a woman and a professional woman who's been in the service and who's done that kind of work. And I was referred by somebody from one of my previous organizations who said she did a good job when she was heading the payment space in the bank. And that's how that guy reached out to me. We had a big round of interviews and whatever else. So there is a reference may come, but your interview process is not going to be small. It's a long winding process, and you have to recognize, because there are PE firms who've invested, so they
Mhm.
want to meet this new person. There are people who are probably already directors there, or some senior guy who's an advisor, who wants to talk to you. So all of that happened, and I joined that board. And that's when I thought, let me also sit through this independent directors exam. And honestly, I didn't want to pay any kind of money for this. To be honest, Karunesh, I wanted to see whether I was capable to do it. Luckily, if you went to the MCA site, you paid some $5,000, you could give the exam yourself. And that's exactly what I did. So, did I take the ID exam for an independent director's job? No, I did the ID exam to understand what a director's role is, in
Mhm.
spite of knowing what I was to perform for, because the briefing was pretty good by the earlier two organizations already. And I cleared the exam, I got an ID certificate. And I said, oh, it isn't so tough, yeah, to get this certificate. It's about being conscious that you want to study, you want to perform, you want to score. And I think that's exactly what I did. I got a chance to learn some things that I didn't know. So this is how I became a independent director. And after that, of course, I've had three, four other board positions. Been very fortunate. One of them came through an executive search, but one thing I realized is most of them come through reference, and I think it matters how you performed when you were being watched. Yeah. Because at that time, you took it for granted that I could do anything and get away. And there are people who watched how you managed your governance. What were your auditable questions? How did you look at the risk when there was a vendor with which you were signing in? How were you scrutinizing your agreements? All of that does matter eventually. So whatever you've done for the 30 plus years of your previous life, you can't just one fine day say, I'm an evolved soul. It does matter what you did in your first 30, 40 years of your career before you went on to a board position. So I think that was a big learning for me whenever those calls came in, to say, oh, we heard about you, we know this is what you do, and we'd be interested in having your perspective here. The second thing that I think worked well for me is this diverse portfolio that I've done. Because of having touched different parts of an organization, The good part is I didn't box myself as a salesperson or a business person or a marketing person. Exposure to CSR, HR, branding, all of these do matter,
Yeah.
because when an investor is investing in you, he is looking at what are you doing for society, what are you doing for shareholder return, what are you doing from an ESG perspective. There are many, many unanswered questions. What you just take as casual, talent management and succession planning. I did that in my last assignment. Something I didn't know, but I did it, right? Eventually, ignorance is bliss. Learned it, executed. First talent management process was under my leadership. All of that suddenly gave you a role of an NRC, maybe an audit person, customer service, things which you did out of probably trying to find out new ways instead of getting boxed and saying, oh, there is a pyramid, I'm going to climb that pyramid one step at a time, and then I'm going to get there. So this is one area of diversifying your portfolio when you're still at your workplace, learning new tricks and trades, which will help you to be ready for boards. The most important is your own exposure to boards. I think people disregard the time that we've made presentations to boards quarter on quarter on various aspects of our own business. So, I posted on LinkedIn an article on being an independent director. Absolutely common article with no great statistics or whatever, saying what you cannot imagine the number of people who wanted to make a discovery call with me. So much
Mhm.
so that I tied up with TopMate for a discovery call, because I got tired of people reaching out to me in inbox and saying they want to have a call with me. Why? Just to ask me. And when I was interviewing these girls, some is a senior manager, I gave the ID exam. Someone's just a team leader in a recruitment firm, I gave the ID exam. I mean, come on, yeah. How are you going to lead from the front in an independent director's role? What is your qualification that you're a woman? Is the company only looking for women? No, the companies are looking for professionals who will add value irrespective of gender.
Correct.
I think they're ready to take the penalty for not getting a proper woman director rather than just picking up a choice which is probably not the best
Yeah.
and placing them on the seat of power. And there is so much of governance for a director. How would you take on a role just based on gender without being governed by the laws of the land, by taking on that role of being independent and saying I will take conflict when I don't agree on something in the boardroom or I am ready to dissent? I think that comes with experience, Karunesh. It doesn't come with classroom training.
Yeah.
That's why I keep saying whatever I have done over my past life is going to haunt me in my present profession. And that's why my diversification is based on my strengths, not on my areas of development. Not
Correct.
at all. I know, what are my areas of development. I'm not working in that space at all. Especially when I don't have a title or a brand to back me up. It's me now, it's my brand. And I'm not going to undersell my brand, ultimately. It's about me also, right?
It's also a matter of, again, every exposure, whether it was presenting to the board, being in a role in a regulated environment, in a banking and financial services kind of an organization, and then on top of that, doing the roles across different functions, whether it's branding, whether it's retail, whether it's HR or CSR. All these come together. So succession planning, NRC, risk, all those things that people talk about from the regulated environment of a board, one has to kind of use the experiences and the muscles that you have built over a period of time to be able to apply.
There are times when you cross over, and I'm telling you, Karunesh, that's the toughest piece. See, I am not the 65-year-old board member. I was in a profession full time just 3 years ago.
Correct.
I was a management professional. I was doing the task. And today I'm not doing the task, but I'm guiding a bunch of young people when they're making a strategy document in a board review, saying this is how we're looking at that thin line, when between being a management professional to becoming a board member. I think there's a lot of self monitoring that you have to keep doing. You do
Correct.
cross it, and then you say, no, yeah, this is not your job. You're
Exactly.
asking this question and you're backtracking from there. I think you just learn. Every day is a learning
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely.
Cannot be
And
put in words.
no, and I like the way you put it, because the biggest difference is from telling people what to do to asking the right question. And good thing is that the more you go senior in your organization, also in an executive role, CXO role, you don't do things yourself. You ask the right questions to your team members, but ultimately you're accountable there. In board, you're accountable in a very different league, and you have to ask the questions. You can't even dirty your hands there because you can't.
Absolutely.
You're not
You said
supposed
it
to.
so beautifully. I'm going to use both these lines because I think the ethos is exactly what I'm saying, but I like
Exactly.
the way you framed it. And that's exactly what I mean. Accountability has shifted
Correct.
from my previous role as a management person to actually becoming a board representative.
Correct.
Completely changed. The accountability is in both the areas, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the extent and the way it is, it completely changes now.
Thank you so much for sharing so openly, so candidly, and so much. All I can say is that anybody who is listening to my podcast and listening to us right now, all I can tell you is that wonderful friend, coach, mentor that one can find in Shanta. And I know that her heart is very open about helping people. So do seek help if you need. And all I can say is that there's so much to learn from the experiences of people that she has watched in action. She has seen people being successful. She has seen people failing. She has also had her own journey of experiencing different things in the portfolio career. There's so much to learn, and I would encourage people to watch this episode, learn and read and follow her also to be able to learn something more. And I can only say that from board matchup side, our program is dedicated to supporting people who are going through transition, those who are building their next chapter. So keep watching us, following us, liking us, and learning from each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karunesh, for this opportunity. I'm really grateful for this because any conversation with you is fruitful. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.